In having my daughter, it did bring my mother and I closer together. She did like the idea of being a grandmother. And by this time in our life, we had moved out of the service stations and we'd bought a furniture removalist truck. So we had our own business. So my mother used to babysit for us sometimes when we'd have a big job going, interstate or somewhere. So my mother thought that was good. Not that he allowed my mother just to have my daughter any time. It was only whenever we needed her, and I wasn't overly allowed to talk to my mother in any way. Even my grandmother, he never liked me talking to her. He never liked me talking to anybody. But it did bring my mother and I closer together, and which was a good thing too. She didn't like the situation I was in, but she didn't really have any say in that. I did go back after an argument with my daughter's father to my mother's house one day with my little daughter, and when he came around to get me and wanted me to go home, my mother didn't want me to go, and she said to me, she said, "I'm going to report you, and I'm going to take your daughter off you. If you go back there, I'm going to prove that you're an unfit mother." And I just looked at her and just said, "He's my daughter's father. I have the other two girls there. I'm going back there now." But my real thoughts in my head was, "Gee, mother, that's the pot calling the kettle black there after the childhood you gave me." My daughter was now just over 12 months old. We'd celebrated her first birthday, and her older sister came home and said that she was moving to Melbourne because that's where they were originally from, and she wanted to go back to Melbourne. Well, I was brokenhearted that my girl was going, but she did. But a couple of months later, my daughter's father said, "We're going to Melbourne too." And so we packed up the furniture van and we moved to Melbourne. My mother wasn't happy about it, and I was pretty scared about it too, going to a place where I didn't have anywhere to go. I didn't know the town, I didn't, anything. But I went down there, and I remember driving through some part of Melbourne, I don't know, as we were coming in the truck, and there was just cars and trams and people going everywhere, and I just remember sitting in the truck crying to myself, covering up that, "Oh no, what have I done? I want to go home." But I stayed there for as long as I could. More to that's coming. After a little while, I quite liked Melbourne. We did work very hard. It was hard with the furniture removals van down there, parking and obviously. And I remember we did this one job, and it was kind of like a spiral staircase inside this house, townhouse or whatever it was. And I had to carry this. I was on the bottom, he was carrying it up the stairs, this big old heavy timber wardrobe. Oh, I thought he was going to drop it and it was going to squash me underneath, but I got it to the top. Some of the jobs there was just so hard because of where they were, and the weight of things was really hard. At least being in Melbourne, I was once again close to the eldest daughter, so I really liked that. And we were close to his sister and her husband and their kids. Arguments slowed down a little bit for a little while, but then as we were there for a little while, things got out of control again. And I remember we had an argument one night, and his sister got involved, and she actually put me into a refuge kind of thing for women and children. She was lucky she got me a place there, so I had somewhere to stay. I was there for a couple of days, but then he found out where I was, and he was coming there all the time and banging on the door and singing out, and so I ended up having to go back to him. But I went back because I still had the youngest daughter at home. So we were down there for a few months, and it was coming up to Christmas, and the eldest daughter, she had a new boyfriend, lovely guy, And he came over to our house one day while my daughter's father was at work in the furniture van, and he asked me some advice on buying our daughter an engagement ring. He wanted to ask her to get engaged at Christmas time. So I, gave him some advice and showed him some rings that she'd probably like and things. Well, then later on, he'd gone and left, and my daughter's father came home, and I said, Emma had come around to, get some advice on things. Well, he didn't take that as what had really happened. He took that as I was having an affair with my daughter's partner. So once again, all hell broke loose. So anyway, they got engaged at Christmas time. It's now New Year's Eve. And they both came over. My eldest daughter and her partner came over to celebrate New Year with us. Well, my daughter's father started, and he used to play these little mind games. And if you didn't know what was going on, you couldn't guess it. But he'd play these little mind games before he'd go blah. And he was playing this mind game with me and with my daughter's partner. Well, my daughter and I both knew what was going on. But the poor partner, he had no idea. Well, all of a sudden it just burst out. And she was so annoyed at him. And she said, "Come on, Loretta, you're not staying here. You're not putting up with this any longer. Pack your things. You're coming with us." And by this time, the youngest daughter was old enough to look after herself. I knew I could go. But what made the real decision was when I went into my daughter's bedroom, my baby's bedroom, to pack her clothes, she followed me in. And so I went into the bedroom, and then she followed me in because she could walk by this stage. She was walking really well at 9 months old, actually. But her father was coming in too. But as he got to the door, she turned around, swung the door closed in his face and said, "Out!" She wasn't going to let her father come in. This is a not quite 2-year-old little girl, mind you. She'd had enough too. So I knew then it was time for me to go for the safety of my daughter, because he could have swung that door open and knocked her flying and really hurt her. So I did leave with them that night. So I left with them. I stayed at their place that night. I contacted my mother and brother. My brother was living back at home with my mother. He had sent me some money, or he paid for my plane ticket, or something anyway. And I jumped on a plane the following couple of days later and flew back to Brisbane, and I never went back to Melbourne again. But I was only in Brisbane for a little while when he would contact me and, what me to, and I said, "No, I'm not coming back to Melbourne. That's it, I'm done." But then he packed up and came back up to Brisbane to live. And I was still living with my mother. I wasn't going back there, but he rang me and he said, "Can you bring the little one over? I'd like to see her." And so I did. I took her over. I did the right thing. But as soon as I got there, he said, "Give her a bottle and have her go to sleep," because he just wanted sex again. And I was too scared to say no, so I did. But I never, ever took her back. I never went back there again. I was quite happy for him to come and see her and be a part of her life, but I was never going to be there again and be put in that situation because I was done.